Hi, I'm Dave from boyinaband.com, and on this tutorial I'll be showing you how to make a simple electro pop beat in Reason. I'll start with the kick, the snare, then move on to the hi-hats. So, to start with, electro pop can vary. Some of it has heavy beats and some is much more focused on the synths and vocals. This tutorial is geared towards the less heavy and more poppy side of electro pop. That will give some pointers on how to make things heavier if you want to. To start with, if we have a look at the beat, if I right click and initialize the patch, we can build this up from the start, and I'll show you how it's made from scratch. Right click and create a line mixer 6:2, followed by an instance of Redrum Drum Computer. Now I'm just going to load up some samples into here that I've made for this tutorial. If you don't know how to load samples into Reason, check out my tutorial on how to do so. So the samples we'll be using, I've got this kick drum, a clap, and another clap. It's a bit wider. The kick drum's simple because, as I've said, this is a more basic beat, and I have two claps to lay it together for a more thick percussive texture. Next, I'll teach you something cool I found out recently. We want it so when one clap is triggered, both clap samples play. So if we have a look at the moment, I press that, only that clap sample is playing. If we press tab to look at the back, if you can't see because of all the wires, press L, and that just hides the wires. Now, drag the gate out from the triggered clap, channel 4 in this case, to the gate in of the slave clap, channel 3 here. Now, have a look and listen. If I play the clap again, both claps are played. Sweet, huh? Next step is to make the beats. Now, I've already done this in this case, but if you want to do this, all you have to do is select the channel you want, place some beats in the redrum sequencer here, test them out with run, and then right-click and click copy pattern to track, and that copies the pattern to the track. Funny that. So if we disable the pattern section for now and have a look on the track, if I zoom in, you can see that I've made separate note lanes for the clap and the kick as well, just so it's easier to copy and paste different patterns, but that isn't essential, and for simpler songs it's a bit over the top. Okay, so we've got our basic beat. Next, we want to turn it into something a little more powerful and filling. So first of all, we're going to beef up the kick drum. So right click and create, then shift click on M-Class Maximizer. If you shift click, look at the back, it's not automatically connected to the redrum unit. Next, connect the kick drum, channel 1, to the audio input of the maximizer, and then into the mixer. If you press L, you can just about see that the wires have connected to the mixer now. Back to the front, if we have a look at the maximizer, we want to turn on the 4 milliseconds look ahead and turn up the input gain by about 5 decibels. Something like that. This will boost the kick drum, even if, as in this case, it is very bass oriented, without much of a noticeable click, meaning it's more prominent in the song, though it won't be as prominent as if it did have a click. And that's how you make the punchier, heavier beats. So if we take a listen to that, without, and with, you can see it's a lot more prominent. Next, we're going to make that clap nice and filled out. On its own, it's still pretty dry, so right click and create a spider audio merger and splitter. Then run both claps 3 and 4 into the unit. Right-click the splitter and create a stereo imager, an equalizer, and a compressor. Now you see, because I didn't shift-click, it's automatically connected to the redrum instance rather than the spider audio instance. So if we just move the redrum instance output into the audio in of the mixer, and then the output from the compressor, if you can just about see that, into a spare channel in the mixer. And that's going to be the channel that the clap comes through. Don't forget to take the output from the spider audio instance into the input of the stereo imager. So that's going from the splitter to the imager, equalizer, compressor, then into the mixer. Now, press tab to look at the front, and we're going to see how this changes as I change the settings here on the imager, equalizer, and compressor. Now, we're going to widen this sound by taking the width right up to full here on the stereo imager. Notice how the claps are panned left and right here in the redrum instance? That just means that the stereo imager is able to make the claps even wider in the stereo field, which makes the clap seem like it fills out the sound a bit more. Next, in the equalizer, set param 1 to boost around 360 Hertz by about 7 decibels and a bandwidth of around 2.5-ish. Now that will just boost the punchy low end of the clap. And to boost the prominent high end, we want to use param 2 to emphasize around the 1.5 kilohertz mark. It's down a little bit. And then again by about 7 decibels and width increase to about 2.5. Lastly, on the compressor, turn the input gain to full. And notice how much harder and punchier that is now. Now turn the threshold right down to about -25 and the ratio to infinity to 1. What that does is it means the clap hits hard, and then after the attack, which is 50 milliseconds, it goes down to the threshold specified. This change in volume adds to the dynamic range and makes it feel punchier. So, now the clap and kick are sorted, you can also add, up here, the mixer, right-click, create RV7000 Advanced Reverb, just to make the clap sit in the mix a bit better. But it's usually a good idea not to add too much reverb to a bass drum, since that makes the low end messy. So I'll just add a little bit of reverb to the clap. If we have a listen to that then. Maybe turn it down here in the mixer. That's better. Okay, next I'll explain the hi-hats. If we go into the hats combinator I've made here, hi-hats are an important part of electro pop. They help define the pace of the track, but also can add some interest into the percussion. In this case, for example, there's a sample here, which sounds like crickets chirping, which I've used on the backbeat in this one section. I'll just play for you quickly here. Just a bit more unusual and interesting. So again, I've made this by making a redrum instance inside a combinator just to keep things nice and tidy. In redrum, make sure channel 8 and 9 exclusive, this option down here, is selected. This means that when channel 8 is triggered, it mutes what has been played from channel 9. So I've got this long sample, relatively long, ride sample here, but if I trigger that and then trigger that, it completely cuts off what's coming through from channel 9, which can make for some cool percussive rhythms. Another thing I've done is pan samples left and right. This widens the sound and again makes that percussion a bit more interesting. So, once the hi-hats are in the sequencer, you do that much the same way you add the beat. Again, I've made different track lanes. If we have a look, I've got one for the crashes, a couple of different hat loops and that cricket chirping sound. After that, I've added 3 things: an M-class equalizer, a stereo imager, and an M-class compressor. The equalizer is harshly cutting around the 2.5 kHz mark by about -12 decibels, about a bandwidth of about 2.5. This is removing the high end of the hats, because when you add vocals to the track, you don't want them fighting for precedence with the high-end percussion. So if we take a listen as I add all these in one by one, that's just removing any of the frequencies around the vocal area there. Next, the stereo imager. That's just going to widen the sound a little bit in the high end. And finally, in the compressor, I've whacked up the input gain by about 8 decibels and then brought the threshold down to -25 again, and the ratio to infinity to 1. So if we turn that on, it makes it a lot more prominent, so even after the cut, you can still hear the hi-hats quite well. Using this unit means that the hi-hats will have this nice warm compression to them, making them all at a similar level and feel a bit more like part of the same instrument. So let's take a listen. There you have it. Some pretty punchy percussion to be proud of that's more electro pop than a city full of owls. Make sure you check out all the other tutorials on how to make this electro pop song. See you next time. If you found this tutorial useful, help me out by rating this video or posting a comment so other people can find it. And don't forget to check out my website, boyinaband.com. Have a nice day!